There is a moment, and if you're over 50, you may have already had it, where you walk into a room and stand there completely blank with no memory of why you came, and you laugh it off. Everyone does. Senior moment, you say, and you move on. But what if I told you that Chinese physicians identify that exact moment and six others like it as early warning signals of cognitive decline centuries before Western medicine had a word for dementia? And what if the science published in the last decade is now proving them right? I'm Dr. Ming Chen, and I have spent 23 years practicing integrative neurology and internal medicine, working at the intersection of Western clinical science and East Asian medical frameworks that have been observing the aging brain for over 2,000 years. What I'm going to share with you today is not folklore. It is not alternative medicine in the dismissive sense of that phrase. It is a collision between ancient clinical observation and modern neuroscience, and that collision is producing some of the most important early detection insights we have ever had about Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, and cognitive decline. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 early signs of memory loss that Chinese medicine identified long before Western science caught up. For each one, I'll tell you what Chinese medicine observed, what modern research now confirms, and most importantly, what you can do about it right now. Because here is the truth that drives everything I'm going to say today. Cognitive decline is not a light switch. It is a dimmer. It moves slowly. It gives you signals. And those signals, if you know how to read them, give you a window of time, years in many cases, to intervene, to protect, and to preserve. But before we get into the 7 signs, I need you to understand one central concept because it is the thread that connects everything in this video. Think about a river. A healthy river has strong banks, clear water, steady current, and consistent flow from its source to its destination. Information moving through a healthy brain works the same way. Clear channels, strong signal, reliable delivery. Now think about what happens to a river when sediment builds up slowly over years. The banks weaken, the current slows, the water clouds, the flow becomes unpredictable. You don't notice the change on any single day. But over a decade, the river has become something unrecognizable. Chinese medicine has a concept called kidney essence in Jing, which governs the vitality of the brain and is considered the deep reservoir from which cognitive function draws its energy. Western neuroscience calls this same reservoir by different names: neuroplasticity, synaptic density, cerebrovascular reserve. But the observation is identical. The brain has a reserve. That reserve depletes slowly. And the 7 signs I'm about to describe are the early signs that the river is beginning to silt. They are not a diagnosis. They are an invitation to act. Sign number 1, increasing difficulty finding the right word mid-sentence. Chinese medicine called this tongue-heart disconnection, a disruption in the pathway between thought and expression. They observed it as one of the earliest signs that the Shen, the cognitive spirit housed in the heart-brain axis, was losing its fluency. What seemed like a language problem was understood to be a signal about the integrity of the entire system. What we now know from Western neuroscience is that word retrieval difficulty, what researchers call anomia in its clinical form, is one of the earliest detectable markers of neurodegeneration. It reflects a disruption in the left temporal lobe's lexical access network, and it often precedes other measurable cognitive deficits by years. A 2018 study published in Neuropsychology from the University of California, San Diego tracked 1,100 adults over 55 for 7 years and found that those who scored in the bottom quartile for verbal fluency at baseline were 2.7 times more likely to develop mild cognitive impairment within the study period compared to those with strong verbal fluency scores. This is not about occasionally forgetting a word. Everyone does that. This is about a pattern where the word is on the tip of your tongue regularly, where conversations begin to feel effortful in a way they didn't 5 years ago, where you find yourself using placeholder words like the thing or you know what I mean more frequently than before. What can you do? Language is one of the most powerful exercises for the brain because it recruits enormous neural real estate. Read aloud for 10 minutes every day, not silently, aloud. The act of converting text to speech engages multiple brain networks simultaneously. Do crossword puzzles. Learn 5 new words per week in any language. These are not trivial hobbies. They are genuine neuroprotective interventions with documented evidence behind them. Sign number 2, unusual difficulty with spatial orientation in familiar places. This is the one that tends to frighten people most when they first notice it, and rightfully so because it is clinically significant, not getting lost in a new city, getting momentarily disoriented in your own neighborhood, taking a wrong turn on a route you've driven 1,000 times, finding yourself briefly uncertain which direction leads to the exit of a store you shop in every week. Chinese medicine described this as a weakening of the kidney's ability to anchor the spirit to the body's coordinates, a somewhat poetic description of what modern neuroscience now identifies as early hippocampal dysfunction. The hippocampus is the brain region most sensitive to the earliest changes of Alzheimer's pathology, and spatial navigation is one of its primary functions. The hippocampus builds internal maps. When those maps begin to degrade, the first sign is often a subtle, occasional unreliability of the familiar. A landmark study published in Nature Communications in 2019 by researchers at University College London used a smartphone navigation game called Sea Hero Quest, played by over 27,000 participants, and found that spatial navigation ability declined measurably from age 50 onwards, and that the rate of decline in people who later developed Alzheimer's symptoms was significantly steeper years before any clinical diagnosis was made. They were watching hippocampal change through a video game before symptoms were clinically apparent. The action item: take note, do not dismiss these moments. If spatial disorientation in familiar places is happening more than occasionally, mention it specifically to your physician and ask about a cognitive baseline assessment. A single neuropsychological evaluation now gives you a documented baseline to measure against in the future. That baseline is invaluable. Sign number 3, changes in dream quality and sleep architecture, specifically vivid, disturbing, or acting out dreams. I want to spend some time on this one because it is profoundly underappreciated in Western clinical practice, and Chinese medicine was centuries ahead in observing the connection between dream disturbance and cognitive health. Traditional Chinese medicine classified dream disturbances, particularly vivid, chaotic, or frightening dreams, as a sign of heart fire disturbing the Shen or of kidney essence failing to anchor the mind during sleep. The connection between disrupted sleep and cognitive decline was considered so clinically fundamental that dream quality was a standard diagnostic inquiry in every patient encounter involving memory complaints. What we now know is this: REM, sleep behavior disorder, a condition in which people physically act out their dreams, sometimes violently, is present in up to 80% of people who go on to develop Parkinson's disease or Lewy body dementia, often appearing 10 to 15 years before any motor or cognitive symptoms emerge. 10 to 15 years. This is one of the strongest predictive biomarkers in all of neurology. But even short of that clinical threshold, disrupted REM sleep matters enormously for memory. During REM sleep, the brain consolidates the day's learning and clears neurotoxic waste, including amyloid beta, the protein that forms the plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease, through the glymphatic system. A 2019 study in Science Advances from Boston University found that deep sleep drove a 56% increase in glymphatic cerebrospinal fluid flow compared to wakefulness. Disrupted REM sleep means disrupted clearance. Night after night, year after year, that disruption accumulates. What can you do tonight? Eliminate alcohol within 4 hours of sleep. Alcohol devastates REM architecture even in small amounts. Keep the room cool and dark. If your partner tells you that you are moving, talking, or acting out during sleep, please mention this to your physician specifically. Do not dismiss it as restlessness. It is a clinical observation worth investigating. Now I want to pause and ask you something directly. Of the 3 signs we've covered so far, word finding difficulty, spatial disorientation, and changes in dream quality, how many of them have you noticed, even occasionally, in the last 12 months? I'm not asking you to diagnose yourself. I'm asking you to be honest with yourself in a way that most people aren't. Because cognitive decline is the one condition where early honesty gives you the most power. Type the number in the comments, 0, 1, 2, or 3. And if this video is giving you information you've never heard before, please subscribe to the Dr. Ming Chen channel right now and give this video a like. This community exists precisely for moments like this one, when the information you needed finally reaches you. Sign number 4, a decline in the ability to smell. This one surprises almost everyone. It surprised many of my colleagues until the data became impossible to ignore. Chinese medicine linked the nose directly to the kidney and lung organ systems and observed that a decline in olfactory acuity, the sharpness of smell, was a reliable early indicator of declining essence and compromised brain vitality. They didn't know about the olfactory bulb's anatomical proximity to the entorhinal cortex and hippocampus. They didn't need to. They observed the pattern across thousands of patients over centuries. We now know from modern neuroscience that the olfactory bulb is one of the first structures affected by Alzheimer's pathology and Parkinson's pathology. Amyloid deposits and Lewy bodies accumulate there early and reliably. The olfactory nerve is one of the only nerve pathways with direct access to the brain without a blood-brain barrier, which is why smell changes are now considered a genuine early biomarker of neurodegeneration. A 2014 study from Harvard Medical School published in JAMA Neurology found that older adults with impaired odor identification, tested with a simple scratch and sniff kit, were significantly more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease within 5 years than those with intact smell. Another study from the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center, published in Annals of Neurology in 2018, found that reduced olfactory function was associated with a 47% increased risk of mild cognitive impairment. The practical action. If you've noticed over the past few years that food has less flavor, that you no longer smell things others are commenting on, or that your sense of smell seems generally dulled, mention this to your physician and ask specifically about olfactory testing as part of a cognitive health assessment. It is a simple, inexpensive test that is vastly underutilized. Sign number 5, increasing emotional sensitivity and uncharacteristic irritability. Eleanor, 66, a retired librarian from Vermont, came to see me because her daughter was worried about her. She hadn't noticed any memory problems herself. What her family had noticed was that over the past 18 months, she had become easily frustrated, sometimes tearful over small things, sometimes disproportionately upset in situations that would never have bothered her before. Eleanor told me, "I feel like my emotional thermostat is broken." She was right in a way she didn't fully understand yet. Chinese medicine identified emotional dysregulation, particularly heightened irritability, tearfulness, and what they called liver key stagnation, as an early sign of the system losing its regulatory capacity. The liver, in Chinese medicine, governs the smooth flow of energy and emotion throughout the body and mind. When that smooth flow is disrupted, the first symptom is often emotional, before the cognitive symptoms become obvious. What we now know is that the prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, impulse control, and judgment, is an early target of neurodegenerative change. Before memory becomes overtly impaired, the prefrontal cortex ability to modulate the amygdala's emotional responses begins to weaken. The result is exactly what Eleanor's family observed: a person who was calm and even-tempered becoming reactive, sensitive, and emotionally inconsistent. This is not a personality change, it is a neurological change, presenting as a personality change. Eleanor's full neuropsychological workup revealed a mild cognitive impairment. We began a structured intervention immediately: dietary changes, physical exercise protocol, sleep optimization, and cognitive training. 18 months later, her cognitive scores had stabilized. More importantly, her daughter told me that her mother felt like herself again. The action. If you or your family have noticed a meaningful shift in emotional regulation over the past 1 to 2 years, not explained by grief, life stress, or medication changes, please do not write it off as just getting older. Bring it to a physician and ask specifically for a cognitive screening alongside any mental health evaluation. Sign number 6, reduced initiative and motivation, doing less without understanding why. This is perhaps the most insidious sign on this list because it masquerades as laziness, depression, or simply the natural winding down of life. Chinese medicine called this a depletion of Qi, the will that resides in the kidneys, and recognized it as a profound signal that the deepest reserves of cognitive and physical vitality were being drawn down. Western neuroscience now recognizes this as apathy, distinct from depression, though the two often coexist, and it is one of the most reliably documented early symptoms of frontotemporal dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and Lewy body dementia. Apathy in the context of early cognitive decline is not sadness. It is a reduction in goal-directed behavior driven by dysfunction in the anterior cingulate cortex and its dopaminergic connections. A 2021 meta-analysis published in Alzheimer's and Dementia, pooling data from over 15 longitudinal studies and more than 23,000 participants, found that apathy in cognitively normal older adults was associated with a more than twice the risk of progressing to dementia over a follow-up period of 5 years. More than twice. And critically, apathy is often missed because the person experiencing it frequently doesn't recognize it as a problem. They simply stop. They stop initiating calls to friends. They stop pursuing hobbies. They stop making plans. And the people around them quietly adjust. What can you do? Structured social commitment is one of the most powerful interventions for both apathy and cognitive protection. Not passive socializing, active, committed engagement. A weekly volunteer role, a fixed class, a standing phone call. The brain requires external structure when its internal motivation circuitry begins to fail. Give it that structure deliberately. Sign number 7. A subtle but persistent sense of mental fogginess, particularly in the afternoon. Chinese medicine described this as a clouding of the clear yang, the failure of the body's upward moving vital energy to reach and illuminate the brain by midday. Practitioners noted that patients who reported persistent afternoon mental heaviness, difficulty concentrating after lunch, or a sense that the mind was wrapped in cotton, were showing signs of what they called turbid yin, obstructing the brain's clarity. What we now know is that afternoon cognitive slowing, when it is disproportionate, beyond normal post-lunch dip, is associated with several important physiological mechanisms, including insulin dysregulation after meals, impaired cerebrovascular autoregulation, and early disruption of the cholinergic systems that maintain alertness and attention. A 2022 study from the Karolinska Institute, published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, found that subjective cognitive complaints, including persistent brain fog and afternoon mental clarity loss, were significantly associated with elevated amyloid burden on PET imaging even in people who perform normally on standard cognitive tests. The fog was real. The tests weren't sensitive enough to catch what the patients already knew. The action: track your mental clarity across the day for 2 weeks. Note what you ate before the fog, how much water you drank, whether it correlates with poor sleep the night before. Then bring that log to your physician and consider a Mediterranean or Mayan dietary pattern richly documented in the literature for reducing cognitive decline risk, particularly focused on eliminating the processed carbohydrates that drive post-meal glucose spikes and the associated cognitive dulling. Let's close with your action checklist. 7. Things you can do starting today. 1. Begin reading aloud for 10 minutes each morning to exercise your verbal fluency networks actively. 2. Take a new walking route 3 times this week. Novel navigation is one of the strongest hippocampal stimulants we have. 3. Tonight, eliminate alcohol and keep your room at 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit to protect your REM sleep architecture. 4. Test your own sense of smell. Open your spice cabinet and see how many you can identify with your eyes closed. Note anything that seems dimmer than it used to be. 5. Ask your physician for a cognitive baseline assessment, not because you are worried, but because having a documented baseline now is the single most valuable thing you can do for your future cognitive health. 6. Commit to one socially structured weekly engagement, a class, a volunteer role, a fixed commitment that requires you to show up regardless of motivation. 7. For the next 2 weeks, keep a simple daily log of your mental clarity by time of day, what you ate, and how you slept. Patterns in that log will tell you more than you expect. This is general medical information, and it is not a substitute for evaluation by your personal physician. Cognitive health is deeply individual, and any concerns about memory, thinking, or behavior changes should be discussed directly with your doctor or a neurologist. Please never self-diagnose based on a single video. To every person in the Dr. Ming Chen community, thank you for being here, and thank you for taking your cognitive health seriously enough to spend this time. This is one of the most important conversations in medicine right now, and you deserve to be part of it. If this video gave you something valuable, please give it a like. It takes 1 second and it helps this information reach more people who need it. Leave a comment below and tell me which of these 7 signs surprised you most. And if you haven't subscribed to the Dr. Ming Chen channel yet, please do it now. Every week I'm here bringing you the most important medical insights I know for living well, thinking clearly, and thriving past 50. I will see you in the next one.